Hej och välkomna tillbaka till Stora Aktiedagen. Mats Hård heter jag och jag är er moderator resten av kvällen. Vi ska gå vidare i kvällens program. Första bolaget som ska presentera nu heter Bioinvent och är bioteknikbolag. Välkomna!
Thank you very much for the introduction and welcome everybody to the Bioinvent presentation. My name is Martin Welschof and I'm the CEO of the company. So this is our forward-looking statement, and I would like to start with a general introduction first. So Bioinvent is really focusing on the translation of cancer biology into innovative immuno-oncology therapies, and I will explain to you later what that means. We are obviously a Swedish biotech company and based in Lund, listed in Stockholm since quite some time, and we're currently close to 100 employees. On the next slide, you will have a snapshot of the company. So as I already mentioned on the first slide, so we are focusing on innovation of immuno-oncology, and we are developing therapies which are based on a number of different modes of action. And very important to emphasize at the beginning, so we are really pushing ahead with a portfolio. We're not just focusing on one program. We have currently 4 clinical trials ongoing and will initiate our 5th clinical program by the end of the year. We can do that because we are a relative integrated company. So we have our own research engine that would discover interesting targets and antibodies for cancer therapy. And that has a very important functional screening aspect that I also will explain a little bit later. We also do our own manufacturing, and together with the clinical development, we can move quickly interesting targets and antibodies from the discovery phase into the clinical development phase. The platform that we're using has been validated now through a number of collaborations with big pharma companies, most recently with Pfizer. But we also have antibodies in development with Daiichi, Bayer, Mitsubishi, and Takeda. We have a very strong international shareholder base, and the names I mentioned here. So Redmile is our largest shareholder. Then we have from the US also Omega and Invus, but also very high quality European investors such as Van Herk Investments, HBM from Switzerland, Merieux, and then also a couple of high quality blue chip Nordic investors, so Pension Fund 4, AP4, Swedbank Robur, and Handelsbanken. We currently have a very solid cash position. So we did some two very good financings, one summer last year and one during Q1 this year, which in total raised roughly 200 million US, which gives us a runway at least until the end of 2024 based on current planning. So on the next slide, you see the screening process, which is basically our source for the programs that we are currently developing. And this is at the core of the company, and I will not explain everything in total detail, but just highlight the unique features. So first of all, what is very important, we screen directly on human patient tissues. I have a very close collaboration with a local hospital in Lund, such that we receive a high quality human tissue on a regular basis. And then we use this material to screen against our high quality encoder antibody library. And once we have identified specific binders to the cells of interest, we take those antibodies through a number of animal models in order to screen them for therapeutic activity. And then we focus only on those antibodies which have shown very strong therapeutic features. And for those antibodies, we also identify the target structure. So this is the platform and antibody library that we have used for our big pharma partner collaborations, and that's also the platform that we're using to develop our own portfolio. And August 2018 or summer 2018, we had one program in development, and by the end of the year, we'll have 5 programs, currently 4 active programs. And as I already said, we could do this since we are a very integrated company and we span the discovery, production, as well as clinical development under one roof. Just very briefly, before I go into more detail, so you will see 2 different categories. We are targeting mainly the so-called tumor microenvironment because that contains a lot of interesting cells which are important for the immune response to cancer. And there we're currently focusing on 3 targets. First, there's Fc gamma R2b, which is expressed on very important cells of the innate immune system. And there we have two different antibodies. BI-1206 is our lead, which is currently in 2 development programs that I will explain to you later in more detail. This program also has been already partnered with CASI Pharmaceuticals for China, Macau, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. You will see also the name Merck here, but this is only a clinical supply and collaboration agreement. So Merck doesn't have any rights yet to BI-1206. And then we have a second anti-Fc gamma RIIb antibody, BI-1607, which is still in preclinical development, but we are currently filing a CTA, which we hopefully will finalize by the end of the year, and then we can initiate clinical development by the beginning of next year. A very important milestone for the company. Then the other 2 targets that we're currently working on is Tnf Receptor 2. This is one of the hot and upcoming new immuno-oncology targets. And then CTLA-4. Starting with Tnf Receptor 2, there we have 2 different programs. One is BI-1808, which is our lead. And there we have initiated clinical development by the beginning of the year. And then we have a second anti-Tnf Receptor 2 antibody, which is called BI-1910, which is still in preclinical development. 1808, there we also have a clinical supply and collaboration agreement with Merck. And then our anti-CTLA-4 program, this we run in collaboration with Transgene, which is a 50-50 joint venture. The candidate is called BT-001, and we combine our anti-CTLA-4 antibody with the oncolytic virus platform from Transgene, and I will explain that to you in more detail. So basically, I will now go through all the programs in more detail. Starting first with our lead, BI-1206 in non-Hodgkin lymphoma in combination with rituximab. And there we're currently focusing on 3 key segments, such as marginal zone lymphoma, mantle cell lymphoma, and follicular lymphoma. We have a very compelling scientific rationale in anti-CD20 refractory B-cell lymphoma. This is a chemo-free regimen and has therefore a very favorable safety profile. And there's a very high unmet need for chemotherapy-free options in 2nd and 3rd line. We also have the orphan drug designation for mantle cell lymphoma. For this program, we already have released data at the beginning of the year, excuse me, and more recently, also once we published our ASH abstract, and that was roughly 2 weeks ago. And that was a data cut of July 20. So at that time point, we had 16 patients that had received BI-1206 in combination with rituximab. Out of those 16, 12 could be evaluated. And out of those 12 patients, we have 3 complete responses, 3 partial responses, and 1 stable disease, which is a very nice overall response rate. And more importantly, and that is actually very exciting to us, the complete responses also have a very good quality. That means they are long lasting. And for 2 patients, we already have more than 1 year. So one patient is more than 18 months, and for the other patient, more than 24 months. And this is very important and very exciting. And those 2 patients are actually already off the study and still in complete response. So this is, I think, in summary, a good overall response rate, but also high quality responses regarding the complete responses, I think, very important. This is very briefly the study. So we're focusing on patients who do not respond anymore to anti-CD20 based therapy. This is the dose escalation part. We're at the end of dose escalation, and there will be further data updates. So on December 11, we will present further ASH data, which will then be updated to what you have seen just on the previous slide. And then also we have at the end of the year KOL event on December 17, where we discuss that in detail together with a key opinion leader. So currently we're focusing in this study on 3 aspects. So we are about to select the dose for part 2. Then we are in preparations for end of phase 1 meeting with the FDA, where we then will discuss the part 2 dose, as well as the phase 2 studies design, which potentially could be a pivotal study. And then I mentioned to you our collaborator, CASI Pharmaceuticals. So we're working very closely with them and have submitted the IND for China and hope to get the approval any time point soon, which also would be a nice add-on once we can integrate that in our global clinical development strategy. So very exciting times, and we'll update on all those issues also during our KOL event on December 17. Then the second study that we're running with BI-1206 is in combination with pembrolizumab, targeting solid tumors, patients with who have relapsed or are refractory to anti-PD-1 and anti-PD-L1. And there we're focusing mainly on metastatic melanoma and non-small cell lung cancer. This is, of course, here earlier. We're still in dose escalation. And I will only say that much today. So we'll also, during our KOL event, December 17, update on data that we have generated so far in this study. So there will be data around the tolerability, but also signs of efficacy will be discussed. So before I move into the other programs, just to also remember or remind you that BI-1206 has a potentially broad application potential. So we're currently in indolent non-Hodgkin lymphoma, from which we can branch out into non-Hodgkin lymphoma. In the solid cancer, we're currently looking at metastatic melanoma and non-small cell lung cancer, as already mentioned. And based on data, then we hopefully can also branch into other solid tumors. There's also application potential in autoimmune diseases. This is something that we're exploring preclinically in collaboration with some partners. We're not planning to go into those indications ourselves, since we're focused only in oncology. So then coming to the other two targets that we're currently running in clinical trials, Tnf Receptor 2 and CTLA4. And I will start with BI-1808, our lead program targeting Tnf Receptor 2. So BI-1808 has been validated preclinically quite strongly. So we see a good single agent activity, but it also works very well in combo, which actually is very important because at the end, we all know that cancer therapy will be combination therapy. And based on this very strong validation, which you can see here, this is a single agent run that we did in a certain animal model, and this is combination with pembrolizumab. On this very strong preclinical evaluation or validation, we went then into the clinic and started a trial, which is outlined here on this slide. And we have started actually, we will have two arms, a single agent as well as combination with pembrolizumab that we do in collaboration with Merck. The single arm has been started. We are kind of in the middle of dose escalation. The study is running very well, and we plan to give an update mid next year. And once we have finished the dose escalation, we'll move into 3 different cohorts. One will be non-small cell lung cancer. The second one will be ovarian cancer. And then we also go for a rare T-cell lymphoma, CTCL, which is actually quite interesting since that might open up a fast track to market. Ovarian cancer is also very interesting because there's currently no approved IO drug for ovarian cancer. And we identified the target by screening on ovarian cancer tissue. A little bit later, then we'll start the combination with pembrolizumab, and there we will then branch out into non-small cell lung cancer and ovarian cancer. Very interesting study. And as I said, so the update will be given mid next year. So then moving into BT-001, maybe first explaining a little bit the principle. So this is a 50-50 partnership with Transgene. We have a proprietary anti-CTLA4, which is nicely differentiated from the one anti-CTLA4 antibody, which is used in the clinic, which is called ipilimumab. And this antibody we cloned into the vaccinia virus from Transgene, which is an oncolytic virus platform. And what we achieve with that, so when we do intratumoral infection, we basically get a very high enrichment of anti-CTLA4 only in the solid tumor environment and have a very low systemic exposure. And I think that's exactly what we wanted, since our anti-CTLA4 is a very potent T regulatory cell depleting antibody. And like this, we can really concentrate the antibody where the action is and where the antibody should be active. So we also have here very strong preclinical validation. We actually just had a poster on SITC where we could nicely show the specific exposure of to anti-CTLA4 only in the solid tumor environment and the very low systemic exposure, which was shown very nicely, demonstrated in animal models. Based on that data, then we have started also earlier this year a clinical trial, which is outlined on this slide. So we are currently in part A, and there we want to treat up to 42 patients, single agent BT-001 intratumoral administration at ascending doses. And the current plan is that we want to give an update to the market of the first phase 1 data during the first half of next year. From there, we will then move into part B, where we will combine it also with pembrolizumab. And then in the 2A part, we will branch out into several cohorts with different solid cancer indications. So also this study is running very well. And as I said, so the planned update will be during the first half of next year. As I already mentioned at the beginning, so we have a lot of partners, but they are, of course, in that sense, we are not serving them anymore. So the antibodies that we have provided and targets that we have provided to those partners, they went to Pfizer, Mitsubishi, Takeda, Daiichi, Bayer, etc. And they are working on it. And I'm just showing this. That is not only Bioinvent that has generated antibodies with the Bioinvent platform, puts it into the clinic. So there's also a number of large pharma companies, international pharma companies all over the world having antibodies from Bioinvent in their development. And at the end, I would like to sum up what to look out for 2021. So for the end of the year, basically. And we are very, very active, very, very busy. So I mentioned already that the BI-1206 rituximab in non-Hodgkin lymphoma data will be updated again when we announce our data from the ASH annual meeting. So that will happen on December 11. Then we have the KOL event on December 17, and I think the announcement went already out. And there we will just discuss in detail the non-Hodgkin lymphoma data, but also the data that we have generated so far with BI-1206 in combination with pembrolizumab in solid tumors. And then in the context of BI-1206, so we're waiting for the China IND approval, which hopefully will come at any time point soon. And we're working very hard on the CTA submission for our second Fc gamma R2b antibody that should happen by the end of the year. And that would be then the initiation of our 5th clinical development program. So I think I will stop here. That will give us also more time to discuss and answer to questions that you might have. Thank you very much for your attention.
For an interesting presentation, Martin. I'll head off with a couple of questions. I think you have a strong product portfolio, of course. If for the long term, how long are you planning to develop these products, or are you planning to find partners for all of them, or what's the long-term objective for Bioinvent?
Now, that's a very good question. So currently, our strategy is clearly focusing on partnering, which means not at a very early stage. So currently, the optimal stage, I would say, would be once we have shown proof of concept in the clinic. And then, of course, it depends also on the quality of the partner, on the quality of the terms that you can achieve. Saying so, we remain opportunistic. I mentioned in the context of BI-1206 that we potentially could run a pivotal study. So then we could move a little bit longer along the value chain. And the same is a possibility actually for the program BI-1808 in the CTCL, the T-cell lymphoma indication. So we might run that also a little bit further. But currently, I think short to midterm, we have a partnering strategy, and then hopefully mid to long term, we will grow along the value chain, and also keep in mind we're very well funded, so we can take a little bit more risk and run the programs a little bit further.
Okay, I have a follow-up when it comes to proof of concept. How do you define proof of concept? Is that phase 2 or phase 1 or?
In our case, since we are running the clinical development in oncology, it will be phase 1-2.
Yeah.
So to give you an example, so we partnered BI-1206 with Kasi Pharmaceutical. We did that October last year, which is obviously a geography-focused partnership, which gives us a number of advantages. So first of all, we do early de-risking. We get some money in, we get some pre-validation, but we still keep rest of the world. And this partnering we did at a time when we had the first signs of efficacy. I think that is quite important, especially when you work with first-in-class programs, because all our programs are first-in-class, which means the potential partner would like to see that it works in patients, and that means it's tolerated, but also works. That means does the therapeutic effect.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. When it comes to partnering, how is the competition in this kind of research?
Yeah, so in our case, I think you can look at it from the perspective that, as already mentioned, so we have first in class. So we don't have any direct competition at the moment. So for our lead program, we are the first one in the clinic. I'm not aware of any other program targeting Fc gamma 2e, which is in the clinic. So there might be several programs in preclinical development. This is always difficult to judge. BI-1808, I think we're also leading the pack. We know that there's competition preclinically, but we will be also the first one showing first clinical data. And of course, once you show clinical data and you're the first one, then I think you have a very good position for partnering.
Okay. Very interesting. Do we have any questions from the audience? No. You have quite a lot of money, I think 1.5 billion or something. How long can you develop your company on that cash pile?
Yeah, so based on current plans, we can go until the end of 2024 without any problems, and that's based on current plans. Of course, there might be changes, you never know. But that would allow us to move the programs that you have seen to critical value inflection points.
Yeah, okay. So you don't see any need for share issues or anything like that. Among all your products, which has the biggest potential? Is that B2 1206 or which one do you see has the biggest market potential?
I think they have all the same large market potential. So if you start with BI-1206, the first indication that we're targeting is non-Hodgkin lymphoma, which is a smaller one. That would be just a couple of 100 million. But as you could see, or as I presented, we're also developing this compound in solid cancers, which of course is $1 billion market. And that is the case also for all the other programs because they're targeting solid cancers. So they're all equally interesting. They all equally have the same potential. And of course, the reason why we have a portfolio is that, as you might know, and also the audience will know, you can do the best preclinical development and validation on Earth, but this doesn't give you a 100% guarantee that you can translate that into clinical success. So the reason why I pushed once I joined Bioinvent a portfolio strategy is really to have a risk diversified approach, which means that we'll already account for failures, which of course so far we didn't see any. So even already our first program has started to deliver good results, but you never know. And I think that's the reason why we have a portfolio. But each member of the portfolio is equally interesting.
Yeah, okay. That sounds good. Do you have more projects, do you think, if we move a couple of years forward, 2 years or so? Do you have more things going on in your research and development?
Yeah, so our approach is very clear. So obviously now we have strong focus on the clinical portfolio. We have grown the clinical department significantly. We have tripled it regarding resources and persons. So we're well equipped now to execute properly on those programs. But saying so, even though the main focus of the company is currently, at least externally, on the clinical portfolio, we still run our research engine. So Björn Frendeus, who is the CSO, and his team, they are still trying to identify new, interesting mode of actions, such that at some time point, if we have the right molecules and feel we have a new development candidate, we could add it to the portfolio. So we keep doing this, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. But you never know what comes out, right? So we need to follow you guys. COVID is, of course, something that I think still affects all societies and healthcare. How is that affecting your plans at the moment?
So I can say so far we had not much impact of COVID, and the reason for that is probably we are dealing with patients that are in stage. For instance, in our lead program, BI-1206, those are patients who do not have many other treatment options anymore. And that's the same is the case for the other trials that we're running. So that has helped us. It remains now to be seen what happens with the new variant, Omicron, which is coming and which is already in Europe, as probably you have read and heard. So that remains to be seen. We have taken measures as much as we can, hopefully have enough sites to keep the pace. And as I said, so far COVID has not much impacted Bioinvent. And we do whatever we can do in order to keep it that way, but I cannot guarantee that there will be no impact going forward.
Oh, of course, it's a $1 million question, I think. If we look at your product portfolio, when do you think we can see, as a consumer or a patient, when do you see we will see any of your products actually used in the healthcare industry?
Well, the quickest that we might have is BI-1206. And of course, this is still a crystal ball question because we are now at a stage where we can potentially plan for a pivotal study because we have very good data, we have good overall response rate, have good quality of responders. That is all good. And if that all goes well, then at some time point towards the end of next year, we might be able to start such a study if everything goes on well. And then, of course, you have to run the study, which is then, again, a couple of years. But that could be a study that we could use for conditional approval. So it's a couple of years still, but it's not far away. So if it goes well, it's not 10 years, it's less, it's just a couple of years. Yeah. I wouldn't give you any more specifics because at the end, it depends on data that we still have to generate. Yeah,
I understand. We only have one final question. Time goes so fast. I wonder, Martin, if you look at Bioinvent, what are the key risks, do you think, for your company?
So if I look at the company, I think we have all the ingredients that we need. Obviously, this is always based on human beings. So far, we were able to recruit the right talent and keep the right talent. So I think that's something very important and where we have a lot of focus. I wouldn't call it necessarily risk because we're also doing very interesting stuff which attracts people. But still, of course, this is something that's a challenge. I would call it like this. And then, of course, as I said already earlier, and that's why we have the portfolio, when you do good preclinical validation and do whatever you should do and get the best data and you move programs into the clinic, there's no guarantee that translates one-to-one into clinical success. So looking at the company, I think that's probably the biggest risk. But that is why... And that risk is not inherent to Bioinvent. That is a risk inherent to drug development. So all companies in Sweden and on the world that do drug development, they share that risk. There's no guarantee. But that's why I think Bioinvent has pushed forward the portfolio strategy, and that helps a lot, obviously, to mitigate that risk.
Yeah. Very interesting. I wish you thank you very much for the presentation, Martin. And a lot of things going on the next month in your presentation. So news-heavy times, I guess. We need to move on. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.